Is the Irish god Lugh a sun god? Well, Dagda agus Fáilte, hi, hello, and welcome. Jon O'Sullivan from the Irish Pagan School here. And as a Irish storyteller, practicing pagan, priest devoted to the god Dagda, and someone who studies our mythology and our past and our spirituality, native spirituality here in Ireland, he's not. He 100% is not. And so we really need to stop calling Lugh or connecting Lugh with the sun. The reason why is many and varied, but the first and most core element, the most grounding factor of all of it is there's no information about that. There's no medieval information about that. There's no records of that prior to the early 1900s. And as such, given that we know the 1900s brought a lot of romanticism, Celtic revival, whole lot of areas of exploration of expanded spirituality and pagan beliefs. At that time, there was a lot of drive to conflate one thing with another, to compare, well, this is like that, and let's try and romanticize it all or try and parse it all into the same umbrella term. And that's being generous and not using words like appropriation, cultural abuse, and pretty much harm. But when it comes down to Lugh, there is no records, there's no older information, there's no older stories, there's no folklore, there's no mythology that links him with the sun. Now, there is one reference, there is one reference that people believe connects him with the sun, and it's actually a mistranslation. So there is one part in our mythology where it says that Lugh is coming across a field, and as he comes across, it's as if the sun is rising. To see him approach, it's as if the sun is rising. But the literal wording in there, the translation from the Irish, people say, okay, well, it's the rising sun, so he's a solar deity. No, what it actually means was a colloquialism term for someone who's a good-looking person. You would say that they were sun-faced. They were green egg, as in they had a sun face about them. Now, that doesn't mean they were literally solar shining halos. That just means he was a good-looking guy. So that is the only connection with him and the sun at all. And so any other reference is very clearly bolted on later additions to the narrative. But it's so common. If you crack any kind of modern books now, any like Celtic studies, neo-pagan stuff, you will find straight away people have latched onto this and carried it forward. But most and many academic scholars who do the older translations and who have looked at this corroborate the fact that there is no connection between him and the sun. Now, that does not mean that Lugh is not a fascinating, interesting, and powerful deity. There is a lot to understand about Lugh, but now that we've kind of parked the not a sun god part, maybe I can take you a little bit deeper if you're still here and you want to know a little bit more about him. So the first thing to really understand about Lugh from our oldest mythology is that he is a deity of two tribes. And this is very, very fascinating because his father is given as Cian, who is a member of the Tuatha Dé Danann, but his mother is given as Ethna, and Ethna is a member of the Fomorians. And so, given our mythological past, our ancient early first arrivals into Ireland, the medieval manuscripts that we have for this, particularly this story, it's called the Leabhar Gabála Éireann, the Book of the Taking of Ireland, and the oldest translations we have date to around 800 and 900 Common Era linguistically, even though the physical copies are like medieval manuscripts from the 11th to 12th centuries. But we know linguistically it's older because of the language, which again, fascinating. But narratively speaking, the Fomorians and the Tuatha Dé Danann are enemies. In fact, the Fomorians are the ancient enemies of the ancestors of the Tuatha Dé Danann. So by the time we come later into the story and we have Lugh being born as this person of mixed lineage, it's not just a person of mixed lineage, it's a person of mixed lineage from opposing factions. In fact, Etna, whose father was a person known as Balor, was said to be a Fomorian warlord, and he was under a prophecy that said his grandchildren, he would be slain by a grandchild. So much so that he took Etna and locked her away in a tower. Now, this might be a very common trope, princesses locked in towers, from more modern narratives and stories that we have. But we have that thing in some of the very earliest stories of Ireland. And so what happens? Cian is on his adventures and he comes across this tower and he's like, oh, I'm just going to sneak in and see what's in this tower. Okay, there's a pre-story or a rave scale, but we're trying to stay focused on Lugh. Cian ends up meeting Etna. They fall in love, they have a relationship and an intimate relationship, and she conceives. Balor finds out about this. She conceives and gives birth to 3 children. Balor is incensed. He takes the children and casts them into the sea. Sadly, 2 of them don't make it, but 1 is recovered. And that 1 is Lugh. Now, one version of the story, he's recovered by Gwivnu, the smithing god. In another, he's recovered by Manannán mac Lir, god of the sea. But either which version, Lugh ends up in a foster care of someone known as Tailtiu. And Tailtiu is this goddess of the lands, pretty much the land in Ireland. Not only of Ireland, she's actually a Firbolg person who is a previous tribe. And I'm trying not to, the reason why I'm weaving all of this together, and it's to give you a really good grounding in who and what Lugh is. Because he's not just a singular figure, he is a figure who is woven in with all of the other tribes, with all of the other lineages. And that's what really centers him in the narrative of a main story known as the Cach Mac Tura, the Second Battle of Moytura, forming the large kind of epic conflict towards the mid-end section of our mythological cycle. So Leric of All Erin is the book of taking Ireland. The Cach Mac Tura is like core lore, core story to this. And Lugh is a very titular figure, an important figure in this, for all of these reasons. Lugh is taken in fosterage. He's raised by Tailtiu, this goddess, who then brings about his upbringing in a very unique way, because that's where Lugh's story parks, as he is taken as an infant and he's raised. The next time we see Lugh is a lot later on, after the first Battle of Moytura, when Nuada the king has been restored and he's feasting at Tara. And up comes to the gates this very handsome, very good-looking, very suave young man who asks for access to the king's hall. At which point the gatekeepers go, yeah, of course, if you can declare a skill that you have that's going to be of use inside, you're absolutely guaranteed access. And he's like, okay, well, I'm a builder. And they're like, yeah, we kind of have a builder inside. We don't need you. And he's like, well, no, I'm a champion. And they're like, yeah, we have Oma inside. He's our champion. We don't need you. What follows is a story where this individual lists out all of these skills. I'm a brazier, I'm a harpist, I'm a physic, a medical user. He gives all of these skills, but every single time, gatekeepers, not today, mate. We have someone inside who's good for that. We have someone who's better than you at that. And so this individual is quite stumped until he takes a step back and he goes, well, go in and ask the king, does he have one person inside who has all of the skills? And this is where the term Eildonach comes from, as in he of many interlinked talents, many interlinked skills. This individual is Lugh. And so, of course, the gatekeepers go, hold on a second. They go in, they check with Nuada, and Nuada's like, whoa, you're saying there's one person here outside who claims to have all of these skills. And they're like, he claims it. And he's like, okay, bring him in. I want to see this guy and I want to test him. And so that's how Lugh gains his access to the Hall of the King. He then is met with multiple challenges of strength, challenges of skill, challenges of music. He's actually given on a harp and told, sit down and play us the music to prove you are a harper of skill, which he does. And so having presented himself with all of these talents, having proved that he has all of these skills, he's then put in the seat of the sage, the one who is all-wise and all-knowing at the king's hall. Nuada knows things are going to go a little bit curly, and so he decides to abdicate his seat as the seat of the king in favour of Lugh to become king in Ireland. This is Lugh. You don't need to bolt on any form of solar deity and harvest stuff and riding across the... No, Lugh is absolutely fascinating and amazing and so in-depth and so core to all of our stories. Early on I mentioned Balor, though, in the Second Battle of Moytura. Of course, there is going to be a retaliation from the Fomorians, and they come into Ireland to cause problems. There was the previous king. Actually, I should probably mention this. The previous king was a guy called Bress, whose father was Fomorian and mother was Tuatha Danann. And so Bress ruled in Ireland, and he ruled unjustly. He caused taxation, oppression, he caused harm and hurt to his own people, the Tuatha Danann, trying to favour the Fomorian interests. He was eventually deposed because of having poor hospitality and giving bad judgment, which is what kings aren't supposed to do. Again, kings, leaders, chieftains are not supposed to give bad judgments and not supposed to show poor hospitality. In case that's of any use or reference to anyone in modern eras or modern times, we need to hold our chieftains accountable to those standards. But Bress is deposed because of he's a problem. Nuada is returned to the seat of kingship, but he knows Bress has gone back to the Fomorians and he's going to bring a war host. The person he goes to is his father, who brings him to none other than Balor, the warlord of the Fomorians. And so the Fomorian invasion comes to this second battle of Moytura. Balor is this absolute monstrous enemy who brings a vast host into Ireland. The Tuatha Dé Danann rally to fight against him. And of course, they've rallied around Lugh, who is this king of many talents, to help them through this. But none of them know for sure that he is also this person of prophecy. And so when Balor takes the field, it was said that he had this really toxic or venomous eye. He would lift the eyelid on it, or he would have help to lift the eyelid on it, and whatever he gazed upon would be riven and destroyed and poisoned toxically. And so Balor hears that there's this new young king, and he's like, okay, well, lift my eye, I want to see him. And the moment he lifts his eye, Lugh casts the sling stone, which pops his eye at the back of his head, which means it rolls backwards and toxifies and hurts all of the Fomorians. And in that instance, Lugh not just fulfills his role as a king and as a guardian and as a protector, he also fulfills his prophecy by being the grandchild of Balor who slays Balor. So following that, he remains as king in Ireland. He actually rules as king in Ireland for 40 years. The Ireland is great and abundant and supported and protected and cared in that time frame for all of Lugh's leadership. And actually, at that same process, Tailtiu, his foster mother, passes away. And in honor of her, Lugh brings up what's known as the funeral games or funeral festivities for Tailtiu, which were first practices in a place called Tailtiu, or Telltown as it is now in our modern, literally the names of this goddess are still on the island. And so that's where the Lughnasa games come from. So Lughnasa is founded from this god who has all of these many interlinked talents, and then presented a way to honor his foster mother, who maybe raised him to have all of these talents, by creating games where all of those talents will be shared and supported and brought together. So as fascinating as that is, it's worth understanding now in modern Ireland, the month of August still carries the name of not just the games, Lughnasa, but also the god Lugh himself. And so if you would like to know more about Lugh, fire questions in below. I have a lot of time to talk about this particular deity. But also, if you would want to honour and celebrate the festival practices of Lughnasa, I have a resource for you. Go to irishpagan.school/Lughnasa, and that's irishpagan.school/LUNASA. I will put a link down below so you can grab that again, but I will probably do another video on that. So when you've seen this, probably a little while, you probably want to look up the Lughnasa video as well. I'll make sure it goes out before Lughnasa, which is the start of August. Generally, even though when we talk about these fire festivals or celebrations, it's not just a particular day or like moon cycle or anything. It's actually the month, the whole period is when Lughnasa will be honoured in Ireland. So with that done, again, back to the top end of it, Lugh is not a sun god. Can we park that? Can we forget about it? Can we do better? Because that is a 19th century bolt-on romanticization of what actually is a very fascinating, very indeed, very interesting god who is worth getting to know for who and how he is himself. Until next time, look after yourself, take care, and slán. Goodbye.